Hello, my name is Heather Dusko, and my Section 3 book is called The Miraculous Journey of Edward Tulane by Kate DiCamillo and illustrated by Bagram Ibatulin. So the summary of the book is that it follows the life of a china doll made of porcelain named Edward Tulane. He is first owned by a little girl named Aibileen, and she cares and speaks to him as if he was a real person. Edward has a mind of his own, and at first is very conceited and selfish, but as we read along, we notice how Edward gets adopted by new owners over time, as he gets lost or a tragedy happens. The new owners name him differently and change his clothes and gender, but they all seem to care for him just as much. He realizes that they have different lifestyles at each home he is brought into. For example, with Aibileen, her family was very wealthy and he even had a maid. But with the hobo named Bull and his dog named Lucy, they had no place to go home to and slept outside. With the sweet little boy named Bryce, who was forced to work to help provide for his family, and brought Edward to his very sick sister named Sarah Ruth, they were poor and lived with a father who was an alcoholic and gone for days. Edward learns a new lesson with each owner, and at the end of the book, he goes from being a selfish doll who cares only for himself and the way he looks to one that learns how to love through struggles. The importance to life and to live happy is to live happy. The importance to life and to live happy is to love one another, which is the moral of the story. The description of visuals is that they're very realistic and show great detail. There is one visual for each chapter, and it represents an actual scene from the story. And below the visuals, there's a phrase that goes along with it. I don't know if you can see that. And it shows the different living conditions, the new characters. It shows the facial expressions of the characters, and it really brings the story to life. For example, in the picture here, we can see that Edward is with one of his owners, and the owner is very happy to carry him over his shoulder after he is found from the sea. The genre that I chose, that I think this book would be under, is juvenile fiction, and I think this would be considered juvenile fiction because it's meant for children to read, particularly young teenagers or third or fourth graders and up, who are beginning to see life differently. They have issues going on back at home, and they could relate to this book and some tragedies that happen. And so it's relatable, and it's fiction because Edward Tulane is, of course, a made-up character, and it's not based off of actual events or people in real life. A direct quote that I chose that I really liked from the story is, "If you have no intention of loving or being loved, then the whole journey is pointless," by Kate DiCamillo. This is a statement to remind us that to live is to love, even if it comes with pain, and at the end of the day, it is what brings us together. I think young children, when reading this story, are... Pause. Some strengths and weaknesses for this book is that the language is very appropriate for children. They could definitely comprehend what is going on, and they could easily follow along and understand the story. It contains a lot of figurative language, such as symbolism, personification, and metaphors. And the imagery was very descriptive and allows the reader to visualize the scenes. It teaches students about character development, such as Edward's Tulane shows a dynamic character development, showing students his significant changes throughout the story. I think this is a great book to teach students about figurative language, imagery, and symbolism. Some weaknesses. I didn't find a lot of weaknesses with this story. I think this is an amazing story to teach to students and bring into a classroom. But I would say the only weakness that I found is that it could bring students to tears because of the emotional connection they may have with the characters as they read the story. A classroom activity would be to help. A classroom activity that I found was to have students create an anchor chart at the beginning of at the beginning where they will slowly add more onto it by as they go with as they was, so as students read each chapter they will learn about new characters. Edward Tulane is at different places, so he starts on Egypt Street and then he's on the ocean floor, then he's at a garbage dump, and then at various places. So I think this anchor chart will help them understand Edward's journey. Also, to remember each character, they'll write down each character in a column with a picture to go along with that. They'll be able to draw and be creative, use their artistic skills and color, and have Edward's name. So Edward's name is not Edward the entire time of the book. It changes. It goes from being Edward to Susanna, to Marlone to Clyde to Jangles, and his name changes various times. So I think that's important for students to know that Edward is the same as Clyde. It's just different owners who named him differently. I think also to add to this, I would add another section, which would be to have students write a summary of the chapters. So along that picture that I have there, I would have students have a section for a summary where they will write and reflect back to the chapter and write down some important information that they could refer back to when necessary. And that is all. Thank you.